Hey, my YouTube family, friends. Welcome to another episode of DnD Bits with myself, Halfling Wizard. And I have two awesome guests with me to sort of round out this triangular table that we're creating here. And you've seen them in videos previous, and that is Jade Luna down here at the bottom. I'm going to use your handle on your picture there if you'd like, unless you want something else, but like we can see your names and stuff. So, and then of course, Steph Bailey over here on my, well, he's on my left, but technically I guess he's on my right. So anyway, welcome. And today we're going to talk about the idea of evil characters in D&D. And my opinion on this, and I'll just start out with mine, is that, and it's probably an unpopular one, and that's okay, is the fact that I don't really think that there are innately evil characters in D&D. I think that you could be a drow and not be evil. You know, I think that, I think it's more intent, and that's why my topic is evil versus intent. And I think it's more intent of the character, what the character's doing, that makes them appear evil. But to them, it's not necessarily evil. But because, I'm not that character and I see it happening, I go, oh, that drow is evil because it's, killing people. So that's my opinion on that. And again, like I said, it's probably not a very popular one because I know a lot of people are very much like, no, the drow are evil. The orcs and the goblins and things of that nature. So, what do you guys have to say? I'll let you guys weigh in on that. So,
Well, I would want to lead with a question, really, and I think it depends on how you interpret the intention of the game as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We've all been game masters at one point or another. I would love to hear how you two handle that idea of like whether or not there is a true tangible evil in the world mechanically, because there are spells that reference like detect evil or detect alignment. Same with the various warding spells. Like the game itself implies that there is a set of things that quantifies evil and good. So how did the two of you interact with that as far as the idea of evil and whether or not somebody can be evil?
Jade Luna, you want to take that, or?
I think I fall into the whole nature versus nurture line of thinking. I don't think anyone is born evil, but I think you are influenced by how you're raised, your experiences, and then there's some sort of, unknown quantity in there, some little brain chemistry, that makes certain people sociopaths and some people not. You can raise people in the same environment and some are going to turn out okay and some are going to go a darker path. But I don't like to generalize anybody. I like to, everyone is, even NPC characters, they all have their own motivations and reasons for doing things. So I guess I'm more along the line of, intent also.
Well, in my campaign, my temporal campaign, Gods of Orlea, I don't think I've ever actually used the word evil. I just usually it's an ancient. I usually use ancient is what I usually use, but or dark.
Or the big bad.
Or the big bad, yeah. It's like the big bad evil guy or gal or whatever. Yeah. But in my campaign, there's a dark ancient entity that's trying to basically destroy all of time and space and recreate it. My players don't know that though, so but I mean, it wasn't a big secret. It was just that's their intent. But so I don't really look at it as, so when I approach it, I guess I'm not really approaching it as here's my band of good guys. Now I need to have a band of bad guys. I look at it as my party, the four folks in my party, they're on a quest to do what they're supposed to do. and that's to stop the big bad person. And the big bad person's whole job is to get, obstacles out of its way so that it can recreate this universe in its own image or whatever. So it's not necessarily the big bad's like this super mwahaha twisting the mustache evil guy or thing that's trying to intentionally murder people,
Right.
to get what it wants. It's literally like, if you stop, I would stop killing you. It's like, if you just let me do what I need to do. And then the other side is the same way. They perceive that sort of action as being an evil action, even though, yeah, that entity is darker than my party. But my party has some pretty darkness, has some layers to it. There are characters in that party that have some pretty dark layers laid in there. So I think that as a DM GM, it's going to be how you want to approach it. Like, if you want to approach it as these particular races are evil, okay, then that's cool. I don't particularly like to do that, because I think if someone wants to play a drow and he wants to play them like a good guy, what's wrong with that? I don't understand what's that. Because I do know that there are some like DM game players, like professional ones out there, who will tell you that drow and orcs and goblins and all that, they're all evil characters. And because I was listening to this random podcast, I just happened upon it. I don't even know. I can't remember the guy's name. I'll have to look it up, put it in comments. But he was basically talking about, he'd been playing D&D for like 30 years. And he was talking about that because one of his players wanted to play a drow. And he basically told him he couldn't, because the drow were bad or evil. And the player was like, well, why can't I play a drow my way? So I was listening. That just sort of was like, I mean, we've seen orcs played as paladins. I've seen an orc paladin, so it's like, why can't you have like a drow cleric that's on the more neutral spectrum as opposed to the evil spectrum? Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
I think I don't understand why we have these alignments that we have to follow so closely.
Right.
I don't think it's too strict. Just every person has aspects of good and bad in them.
Mm-hmm.
So why are we limiting ourselves, and where you can be punished if you don't follow that to the letter? That's not, I think I would be happy if we didn't even worry about alignment.
Oh, I agree. I agree with you on that. I don't think it's necessary. I mean, I think I understand why they put alignments in there, because of the pantheon, the gods, and the lore. I think that they have, because they wanted to break it all up, so they put like the chaotic evil, the good, and then the neutral. And I think that, then I guess to them it makes sense that characters would fall into one of those alignments. And I mean, I agree with you. I don't necessarily I think it limits you, because I think you could have a lawful good character, quote unquote, who does something chaotic or evil, quote unquote.
Right.
So, I mean, circumstances, and I think it's all based in circumstances. I think that, and I've thrown, like in my campaign at you guys, I've thrown some pretty shady circumstances that you all reacted, for the most part, I would say, outside of your alignments.
Right.
And which makes sense to me, because it's like, well, my character would react this way. Why my character would not always stay like my character, my halfling, Soren, he's lawful neutral, but he's done some pretty unlawful neutral things. And so I agree with you. I think they should just get rid of the alignments, at least in the character aspect. I think that, like gods and things of that, I think you kind of need it for that. Because, but I agree. I think they become too limiting sometimes, and they're very, very strict on that sometimes. And I don't really care for that.
Yeah. I've always
Yeah. Go ahead. I was going to ask you how you handled, because I don't know any much about the platform you're playing, but they are what we would consider evil characters. But how do
Right.
you deal with that?
So, in the platform that I'm playing on in my own vampire campaign, it's very driven around the idea that you are burdened with a thing that is inherently not evil so much as destructive. And with that, you're carrying this inherent like drive to obviously to feed on the weak, to go through and dominate and be the apex predator, but also there are moments when that is influenced with incredible fear. So I think that you always have to try to like retain as much of the human aspect of it as you can. As far as alignments go, that was never something that we discussed in character creation. A, because there isn't as heavy an emphasis on it, and B, because it was more prudent for me as someone who is helping them through this process, say like, well, here are some things that we would find distasteful, but since I am encouraging you to play darker people, you can construct circumstances around which either make you feel comfortable or justify it. Going back to the D&D sphere, though, I've always interpreted the alignment system more the way that you guys have, where it's like, it's not so much who you are as much as it is like what you throw your lot in with on the cosmological scale. And I think there's a bit of use to that if you are playing someone who affiliates with that, such as like a cleric or a paladin or a warlock. But I would agree, I don't see a whole lot of use in like the alignment table in the game anymore in the way that people play nowadays. It does feel like a relic of a time gone by.
Yeah, it's like in my campaign with Rohir. He's a cleric. And when we first started this game, he was very, very much attuned to his deity, to his patron deity. And as the campaign's gone on, he's sort of it felt like he was sort of separating himself from it. And I think it's because of the circumstances of which the gods have put them in, and he started to feel kind of manipulated and used and that sort of thing. And so but he was very much aligned with like Omnor, because Omnor is his deity. And now I feel now the player may differ in this opinion, but I feel that he's shifted his alignment a little bit. The Rohir has that he's shifted away from that Omnor alignment just a wee bit, and that's because of the actions that he's made in these past few sessions.
I can see where that's coming from.
Yeah, because it's like, in my character Soren in the other campaign, I've multi-classed him now he's a wizard, and I've multi-classed him with a rogue, which is completely outside of the lawful neutral area. It's moved more towards the other side, and it's because of the circumstances, and all the experiences that he's had. It's really kind of changed him, because when we first came on the scene, he was truly lawful neutral. I mean, he was there. I mean, he did good, but he stayed in the middle as best as he could. And then, just life happened to him. And, he nearly died several times. He was kidnapped. A lot of trauma had happened to him. So his alignment started to shift, and it started to shift in that whole bargain czar part of the campaign. That's when he started I felt that he was starting to shift a little more towards this side of the, more towards the chaotics and that sort of area. And now he definitely has, because now since I've multi-classed him with a rogue, he's definitely a lot, I hate to say shadier, but or darker, but he's a little jaded now.
Right. It's like, and it's unreasonable to think that any character is going to go through what any character in a game, in a role-playing game, goes through, and not become a little chaotic. You know,
Yeah.
it's like soldiers going off to war. We send these young kids off, and they come back changed. And I think it's unrealistic to think the characters aren't going to change.
Right. And I think that the alignments kind of force characters to not change.
Yes, I agree.
Because I really think players are like, well, my character is like lawful good, so I have to make sure that he always stays lawful good. And it's like, well, I get that, and that's a neat character choice to try and maintain that lawful goodness, but understanding that character is about to go through a lot of crap, and a lot of life is going to slap that character in the face, and to sit there and say, and this is where I think the disservice is when you sit there and say, oh, my character is still lawful good, even though all this horrific stuff has happened to him. Because it's like, or her, it's a matter of life experiences in this game. And I'm, because a lot, and I'm going to probably refer to my campaign a lot, but in my campaign, my players' characters have experienced a lot. It's like we've been playing for a year now, a little over a year, and you guys have experienced a lot of tragedy. I mean, a lot, and then some good stuff too has happened. But it's a lot of life is slapping you in the face, and it would be remiss of us to not let those characters evolve.
I agree.
And I think the alignment,
it's restrictive.
Yeah, I think the alignments do. I think players, and this is probably, and it's a mental thing on the players aspect. It's like, oh, I have to make sure that my character always does lawful neutral stuff. And I'm sorry, or lawful good or whatever. And it's hard, and if not difficult, if not impossible, to be lawful good and be in a combat situation.
Right.
Where you're going to be faced with killing someone, and not because your lawful goodness says, oh, they're evil and I have to kill them. So I think that sometimes I think that the alignments are a bit, and from now on, I may just forget the alignments completely and just say, you know what, you're who you are, and these experiences are going to change who you are. You're going to have to make these decisions on your own, based on how you think your character would be in this world.
My character is basically if we're going on the alignment system, I have 2 alignments, because depending on which form I'm in, and I just, you can make yourself crazy trying to figure out, what can I do and not do now? I don't worry about it.
Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me anymore in the game either. And I think a lot of the anxiety that comes from trying to stick to your alignment as close as possible is because for the longest time, a lot of players were punished if they weren't. If you're playing a cleric and you go by the rules of the game, if you deviate from the alignment of your pledged deity, you lose all of your power. Same as paladins.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting concept. I just think that it could be better executed. And I've seen it better executed. As far as going through and creating edicts for those sorts of characters. It's one area. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. It's like, I was just thinking, is it so much that the gods are punishing you, or that you are losing your faith or struggling with your faith that's causing you to lose abilities? Sorry.
Right. I tend to agree, and I think it's one situation where I think how they handle it for the warlock class makes a lot more sense, where it's like you are in direct communion with whatever is giving you power, and it comes from more a moment of transactional value versus several layers abstracted on what the idea of good or evil is.
Right. And I think that's a good, as you were talking, I was thinking about that. As you think about it, this whole idea of labeling good versus evil, I think it can get a little boring, actually, because And the reason I say that is because imagine if you were a witch, or we could use warlock, whichever. I guess a better example would be a paladin. So imagine if you were a paladin and you were playing that paladin as a chaotic evil character. He would still be aligned with whatever deity he was aligned with, and he would have to maintain that chaotic evilness. And I think that he wouldn't be able to, because I mean, no matter what, unless it's a mental health issue, humanity is going to happen in life. There's going to be a moment. It may be a minuscule little moment where that chaotic evil paladin says to himself, "What am I doing? I mean, this is not right." And then he may go, "Okay, let me get back to work." But I think the idea of labeling evil versus good, I think, because I mean, if you look at it, in my campaign, my party who's wandering through this world with all this chaos behind them, I mean, some people, yeah, I mean, some people would consider them evil. Because, like, oh gosh, don't let them come into your town because your town will be destroyed, or something like that. They always, monsters show up wherever they're at, that sort of thing. So I think it's, I think we've got to stop labeling like that. I think it's like, that's why I try to use, like, there's an ancient magic or an ancient deity that wants to do this, as opposed to, this uber evil character is trying to kill you.
Right.
I think it makes it more interesting, because I mean, if you use evil versus good, I mean, white hat versus black hat, it's sort of like, oh well, that's formulaic and kind of dull. I like a campaign where you don't know who's good and you don't know who's bad, because I've been in campaigns like that where you go through the entire campaign, and at the end of the campaign you find out one of your party members has been evil the whole time. Or evil the whole time. Yeah. And that character has basically been manipulating you the whole time.
Wait a minute, is that happening in your campaign?
No. No, this was a campaign I played when I was in college. The DM, and I think I was talking to you, Lisa, about this DM. He was awesome. But yeah, there were 6 of us in the party, and it was our cleric who was bad the whole time. But he would, like, heal us and, like, do all of his cleric stuff. And then it was, and I never thought about it until I thought back on it, that he was always the one that was suggesting that we do this or do that or do this or do that.
Right.
And I was like, wait a minute. And then after the game, after we finished fighting, he was like, yeah, I was manipulating you the whole time.
Yeah. We had something similar happen. We had met this lord that basically had hired us, we were working for, and come to find out that after we met him, he was replaced by, like, an evil again, doppelganger.
Yeah.
And everything that we had done thinking we were doing in the name of good, we weren't. And that was like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I
think if you play true to your character,
yeah,
and that's what you need to stay true to, not necessarily some alignment, but
right.
Is this honestly how your character would react?
Yeah. Given the circumstances that you are in, it's like, yeah, and I agree with that. It's, as a DM, we have to give our characters those circumstances where they have to choose. Okay, if we do this, this happens. If we do this, this happens. And sometimes it's okay to throw in the whole, hey, in order to kill this guy, it's gonna cost the lives of some innocent people. So it's like, do we do that, or do we do this other thing? And I think it's important to kind of throw those moral sort of situations where morality is the idea of morality is sort of tested, and which I love, and I try to do a little bit myself in my current campaign, but and which I have. I mean, it's usually individually through, like, I give one of my characters or my players a situation, and they have to basically choose. Okay, well, this sounds great, but well, wait a minute. And like you, Jadelina, you're actually going through one right now in the campaign with the whole dream you had with Reimer.
Right.
When he says that we'll rule over all of this, you're having a moral issue with the word rule.
Yeah.
Where you know, and so I think that's
they're all doppelgangers. They're not the real people.
Fair enough.
Conspiracy theory. But yeah, I know. I yes. He used wording that is kind of against everything that I thought that person was. So now I'm like, wait a minute. How well do I really know this person?
yeah. So it's an interesting moral dilemma, and then of course Rohir is going through his moral dilemma with the whole arson change.
Right.
I mean, he's going insane over that. And then there's then Osric is not Osric, Orlus. No, it is Osric. Sorry, getting the two campaigns mixed up. He's having a moral dilemma on whether or not, and it just started because they went to the past, but he's starting to have a moral dilemma now because now he's like, well, maybe I should return and become king. He's like, oh goodness, what's so I've just thrown a lot of turmoil into their lives in this last couple of sessions.
Isn't that always nice? I really identify with the concept of like you have to give your players choice. One of my big things is I never want to be caught in a situation where I present them with a clear antagonist and then my party turns against me in the sense of like, oh well, they're like making a good pitch. We should just go along with that. So I always try to construct a situation where it's like there's enough of a dialogue happening between the two forces that drive the plot that the players, and it doesn't have to be the entire party by any means, can choose where they want to fall aligned at. And then they can kind of decide what the good or the evil force is. A good example right now is that my players are all in a situation where they're receiving like these astral projections from this enigmatic higher power. And it keeps promising them things that they couldn't, like, they're all like fairly well learned, but they couldn't even quantify it as possible. For example, one of my newer characters, his name is Matthew, he is in a situation where in his like vampiric infancy, he ended up killing his mom because of like his predator type. He always has to feed off of like direct family members. And since then, he's moved to his little brother. And in the last vision he received from this person, it's like, if you help me, I can reverse all of this. I can bring your mom back and I can break this chain from you. And he's really gripping on that because of the other information he knows about this thing and the things that it would try to do. But it's like, the personal gain from that rather than the consequences that I know will happen. And I can tell that the character and the player are having a hard time finding that at the moment on what they actually want to do. And I love that. That's just, pure serotonin for me, is seeing people struggle.
Yeah. I just lost my train of thought. I hate when that happens. Oh my goodness. Where was I going with that? I don't know where I was going with that. So, okay, it'll come to me in a moment.
Fair enough.
We will. I don't know where I was going. That's crazy that it just happened like that. But yeah. So talking on what you're talking about, though, I can at least talk on that, and sort of what Lisa talked about. Sorry, is the idea of vampires. Yeah, that's an interesting thing because again, I was telling you that I've never played in the vampire series or that platform before. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting. I don't, and I think unfortunately vampires, werewolves, all those guys get such a bad rap because of movies. But I can see, and I think you and I talked about this before, Steph, about the idea of stereotyping vampires, like werewolves and things of that nature. It's so in this topic of evil versus intent, I can imagine as a player it being difficult to separate the vampire from the lore and the lore outside of the game, the more real lore. So I can see how that could be extremely difficult. And so how do you play a vampire without playing a stereotypical vampire? That the idea of they're coming for your children and things. I mean, I understand like character choices and things of that nature, but I can see where that could be difficult for a player, especially if they've never played the game before. And that happens, and it happens in D&D as well, is that people come in with sort of the idea of preconceived notions of what D&D is, and it's the same way with the characters. Dwarves because of Lord of the Rings, halflings because of Lord of the Rings, elves because of Lord of the Rings.
Because of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I mean, all of these characters are sort of embedded in our culture because of Tolkien for the most part. Orcs are the same way. Orcs, goblin, I mean, all of them are in the Tolkien universe. So I know that, usually when people play elves, they're always these like beautifully striking, with the long flowy hair and things of that nature. And, for once, I'd love to see someone play like a homely elf. That's not very attractive, but, has a great personality and, good with weapons and things like that, but doesn't use their looks to get like a lot of what they want. Because, elves can they're like, "Ooh, you're pretty. I'll give you whatever you want." But, someone who actually has to work to get the things that they need.
Yeah.
They meet you and it's like, ooh.
Well, in your campaign, I'm certainly not having any advantage because everywhere we go, they don't trust anyone. Pretty much, they're like, they trust you. So I'm really like, having to hide behind the cloak a lot of the time. So
this is what I was going with earlier. We're talking about you guys in my campaign. You have no idea. This is one of the things I love, and I think this is because I think you guys have kind of done it more to yourselves than I've done it to you. But is you created this sense of, we don't know when the bad guys are going to pop out at us. It's like, so everywhere you guys go, you're kind of like on edge. Because I've got the dark hand who pop out of nowhere.
Assassins that pop out of nowhere, and we're always looking over our shoulder.
Always. That's where, because we're talking about conspiracy theory.
Yeah. You have to take a little bit of credit for that.
I do take a little, and I've talked to, I think, Steph, I think you and I talked about the dark hands, and I created those guys as sort of a mechanism when I have nothing, and I need to get the environment kind of active. I always bring those guys out, and they're always met with sort of the, oh gosh, these guys again, never in the world of anything has anyone been like, when you hear the twang of a bowstring. Immediately, I think the last time that happened, I think it was you, Jade Luna, that was all like, "Oh, good Lord!" That's like someone's like, oh.
"What we want to do is get on the ship, okay?"
Yeah. Well, that's how my players feel when I throw the astral projection person at them. Because it's like they always come and they look really great and they sound even better. And it's like, I just wanted to get something to eat. And now I have to think
I know.
Am I gonna bring my dead mom back to life tonight? Maybe. Is that what I want to do? I need to add that to the schedule? And it's always fun to see that sort of interaction.
Yeah.
To answer,
will the party get a full night's sleep?
Probably not.
Right. To go back to your question though, as far as stereotyping and like steering people away from this, like the typical vampire, I think the game does a good job of disencouraging that because you only get like one thing. Say you want to be like the Count Orlok type. there is a specific class for that, but or class, they're called clans in this game. There's a specific group of vampires that have that archetype to them.
Okay.
But if you go to that archetype, you're locked out of other things. So it's like another big one. There's only one clan that doesn't have a reflection. There's only honestly, you could throw out the various typical tropes, and I could like point you to. There's the one clan that has to sleep in a coffin full of soil from their home, and I find that they once you see that you can't be the whole package, they sort of abandon that idea pretty quickly.
Okay. So in this one, so it's once you pick like a clan, that's it. I mean, there's no going outside of that. Is that what you're saying?
In certain circumstances, yes, because it's a similar thing to picking your class in D&D, but there's a lot more flexibility to the system. There are certain powers that you can get even if they're not your in-clan abilities, but it's harder mechanically because it requires more experience to buy into things like that. But you'll never be like an ugly like a Count Orlok bat vampire who has to sleep in a coffin, who has to like, you know, stay out of the sunlight,
Right.
who has to do the whole thing, because the curses are different. Each clan of vampires has their specific thing that they've been cursed with by God or whatever you interpret the higher power to be.
Right.
And those things are immutable. You can never like switch from one to the other. Well, you can, but that's like you get into some wackadoodle territory as far as the lore goes.
Okay, I could see that. I could see that being kind of like, yeah, unlike multi-classing and D&D, I guess the idea of that is sort of discouraged in this platform, because I can see where it could get muddy. If you say I'm a member of this particular clan, but I'm going to multi-class and become this clan as well, I can see where that could get very.
Yeah, it's possible to do, because instead of like your classes and then it's like if you're a fighter you can't cast spells, the entire gambit of abilities is open to you. But if you were to like do a true multi-class, you would basically be buying into the entirety of subsets of abilities that another clan can do. And that's like, it's such an experience sink that it doesn't happen. Because experience both in my game and in the platform is a very precious commodity.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. Because, you know, like in D&D, you can like multi-class till the cows come home. Apparently. Yeah. It's like you could be like a wizard rogue paladin. And I'm just like, that is crazy. First of all, that's a lot. That's a lot of stuff to keep up with. I mean,
as long as you have like levels to keep going, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a
Yeah, because I mean, you know, technically 20 is the end, but I have recently found a supplemental resource, where you can go higher. You can take them into epic status. It's pretty. I think it goes up to like 25, level 25 now. So it's pretty neat. I have it for just resource material, but in standard D&D, yeah, you go up to level 20, and that's basically the end. And which is unfortunate. I think I think they need to revamp that, where you could go and put it in the official books, where you could go up to much higher levels.
Right.
Because because it sucks, because, and the reason I think it sucks is because you get to level 20 and you beat this big bad, you know, evil person or evil guy, is because it's BBEG, whatever. And then it's done. It's like, well, I accumulated all of this knowledge and skill, and I got to use it once, basically, and now it's over. So I think that they need to either include it in the current books, or create another book of like the epic scales where you can go beyond 20, and you can do these sort of these particular campaigns based on those levels. Because personally, for me, if I put that much work into a character, I want to keep using that character. I want to keep.
Right.
I don't want to just stop. It's like, oh, your
Yeah.
character now retires back to the Shire or whatever. It's like, no. First of all, my Soren probably will never go back home because of all that he's experienced. There's no way he's going to go back to that life. There's no way. So he's going to want to keep going. And I think, honestly, truly, and I think he and Sahara, I think they're going to keep going together.
I agree.
I strongly believe that. I think that even after the others may break off and go do their thing, I really think Soren and Sahara will continue on doing stuff.
If she is ever allowed to leave
true. So true.
Kind of ran away. She's kind of like, I mean, originally she was like, what would be the equivalent of 16 and a petulant teenager? And now she spent all this time trying to get back home. But yeah, the question is, are they ever going to let her leave again?
Leave them. Are they ever going to let her leave again?
One of the beauties.
I have a question for y'all, since you're both DMs. If we can deviate a little bit.
Sure, we can.
You're talking about being level 20 and then what happens and all. It's like, there's a whole, as a DM, the few times I have DM'd, you don't want to kill your players. You don't want to destroy the characters that they've worked on. But yet, if there's no risk of that happening, if you start to feel like invincible, like, oh, he won't, I may be in a coma for a month, but he's not going to kill me. So you get to a high enough level, someone's going to probably resurrect you if you die anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you put the risk in there, the life and death risk, without actually destroying something, these players have worked on for so long?
I can say I try to kill you every session.
You never pull back.
Nope. There was one time I lied. There was one time I pulled back, and that's because it was Amber's character, and at the beginning of the battle, it was with I want to say it was in the fire planes, like way back when the fire planes, and y'all were fighting those big fire monsters, and she got hit with no, it wasn't the fire. I'm sorry, it was the Cyclops that you guys that y'all fought.
Yeah, in the valley. Yeah.
Yeah, and she got hit, and she was like down, and he could have easily hit her again, and I chose not to, because I knew that in the rules of the game that if he had hit her again, he would have probably taken like well over half her normal hit points. So I was like, okay. And that was pretty early on in the fight too. So I was like, no. So I pulled back. I held back that time. But every other time, I've literally tried to kill you.
Okay. I've wondered, because sometimes it's like we're right down to, there's 3 people down and the other 2 aren't looking good. And it's like, oh,
Yep. There was the time, was it this, not the last session, but the session before when y'all were fighting the fire giant dreadnoughts? Is that the one?
Yes. I think me and another character were basically paralyzed.
Yes. Yes.
And then, I was really concerned at that point. But my thought was always, if you do something just stupid, you're probably gonna make a sacrifice. If you run into a big fight with 3 hit points, you deserve to die.
Yeah.
If you just cannot roll a dice to save your life, I don't want to punish you.
Right. But no, I have never I've never pulled my punches, except for that one time, because one, I know you guys well enough that I don't have to do that. You guys, for the most part, work pretty well as a team. You know, there are moments where you guys don't, but for the most part, you guys work pretty well. So the way I base my attacks, and I can tell you how I base my attacks as a DM, is my monsters will attack. It's like the T-Rex theory. If you're moving, I'm coming for you. You know, so if you're down, he doesn't care about you. So he's going to go. Yeah, you're not a threat, so who cares? So he's going to go whatever the bad guy's going for the next moving target.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, unless it's a specific monster that's like will sit there and pound, like the Cyclops was one of those that would basically pound on you until it was over. So if the monster is that type of, you know, because I give all my monsters personalities, so it's like. And you guys fought the oh god, you guys have fought so much. Those beasts that you were fighting, that it was all nature. It was, remember you were on the road in the woods, those things came out and
in the dark.
Yeah, it was all instinct. That was all instinct, and they weren't. So it wasn't I'm going to go for you. It was like we're killing you because we're going to eat you, or we're going that sort of thing.
I know which one you're talking about now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but for the most part, I give all my monsters some sort of character, some sort of personality. So it's like the fire giant dreadnoughts. That was very much like you're down, so you're not a threat to me anymore. So I'm going for the one character that is the biggest threat, and that was like in that campaign was Rohir, because he was using banishment. So they were after him. I mean, it was like. The ones that were over there were after him. The one that was over by you was after you, but they were like, get rid of that guy because he keeps banishing us, you know. So I give them that sort of characteristics where they're also in survival mode, because they're like kill or be killed. So that's how so I don't hold punches. It's like I have a strategy for all my monsters, and if you happen to be in the way, and then you get down and they're like, okay, you're not a threat anymore, but then you stand back up, well, they're going to turn and go, oh, you're back up, so I'm going to come after you again. It's like, so it's that idea of if you're down and out, then you're not a threat to them and they don't care about you.
Right. What is your take on all that stuff?
So I think I meet in the middle of the two of you in that I'm a pretty reactive game runner. I don't generally like go into combat thinking that I'm going to kill my players unless they have like opened up a opportunity for me to do so. Generally, either by being reckless or by playing the game in a way that doesn't like suit their characters, because they generally play like pretty careful people, as like is written in their biographies. And as is necessary, because you live as a vampire in a world of technology, which puts you at a pretty heavy deficit. When you think about like, how would the U.S. government react to the sudden appearance of vampires? It would be a pretty like erratic. That's not a word. It would be a very bad situation. And I also have to think like most of the enemies that they end up fighting are of human intelligence or higher. So I always try to give them either an out if they are doing really poorly, or something like that. But I have no compunction with killing any of my characters. As far as like taking something away from them that they've done for so long and put so much time into, there's avenues for them to get that time back as far as experience goes. And as far as like their characters go, I am blessed to be working in a system right now where there is like resurrective possibilities even after the final death. So it's like if their like meta goal is to bring that character back to life, and they pitch it to me in a way that makes sense, then yeah, we can do that. But as far as like going through and killing the character, then it doesn't really bother me because it's just a game. It's not like I'm like taking away their dog or something. Which is
Well, yeah, and the reason I don't hold my punches is because it's real. I look at that world to them as reality, and in their reality, monsters aren't going to hold back. And plus you guys have Rohir has resurrection capabilities already. Not that I use that, not that I justify that in what I'm doing, but I know that if someone did get killed, he technically could bring them back if he wanted to. But so, there's a risk in my campaign. You guys, someone could die, and I'm not afraid to kill characters. I mean, remember the one guy I killed? Y'all are on the road. Remember he was torn apart by the. Y'all were at one of the ruined temples, and he came down the road and. Remember, I killed that guy off. Pretty brutally, actually. It was pretty brutal. So, now I will say one of the great things about my campaign is that technically I, as DM, could resurrect you just because of the nature of the game, because of the whole temporal aspect.
That's true. That's true.
So if you died, I technically could create a situation where that could be reversed. Not that I would, but I could technically.
Right.
Because I want my players to have that sense of danger. That's why I don't hold back. That's why I don't hold back.
I have played in campaigns where you sense that, oh, we're all about to die. Oh, they had one.
Oh, look how horrible the monster's rolling all of a sudden. It's like
yes, and on one hand, you want to see the fulfillment of that character's arc, but on the other hand, if there's no risk, you can be completely foolhardy and reckless and do anything because they're not going to kill me. So.
Yeah, there's a point in the other campaign I thought Soren was going to die. I got hit pretty bad. I don't remember when it was, but I know I was down and I had two fails.
Right.
And I thought, I literally thought, well, this is the end of this character. And I was like, and I don't think Austin was pulling his punches. He could have been. I think he was, because pretty sure I should have been dead by now, but that's okay. But I don't know. It's like when I come at you, I come at you. It's like don't even think that it's. Well, you guys have seen it when like the dark hands show up. You'll have that one, and then all of a sudden you're like kicking that one's butt, and all of a sudden two more show up. It's like, no, I'm not going to let you get away with it all like that. It's like,
there's an easy out.
Yeah, so I'm trying my best, and I'm not intentionally trying to kill you, but I think it's the nature of the reality that these characters live in. Monsters are not holding back. They're there to do what they're there to do, and so I'm going to do that.
What's the closest you've ever gotten to wiping out a party? Open question for the both of you. I know that you've done a little bit of DMing.
What? I don't know if it was the Fire Giant Dreadnought session, but there was a session that all but one of you was down.
Yeah.
I would say because Orlus was down, I think you were down, and I think Arson was down. So Rohir was the only one that was still up. Mm-hmm. And I think you got, and I don't know, I can't remember how successful you were on your saves, but
I think Orlus came out of his.
Yeah, it was close.
I did right at the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the one I was specifically thinking of.
Yeah.
I have never killed my entire party. I have been in a party that was killed.
I have too.
Hey, we're bored. No, you're not.
Yep.
You're good. All of you.
I was in a campaign in college where there were 8 of us in the party, and I can't even remember what we fought a whole group of something. Fire elementals, and we were in a volcano, in like a caldera, and these fire elementals came out of nowhere, and they literally wiped us out. And the DM was sort of like, "Oh God, what did I just do?" I was like, "You literally killed all of us." I mean, I remember I got because I was playing I played I played a wizard then too. It wasn't Soren; it was a different character. This is before Soren, but I was fighting. I got knocked down pretty quick, and then I failed all 3 of my saves. And I was like, "Oh, that's it for me. I'm dead." And then we all literally dropped like flies. It was horrific. It was horrific. And of course, the DM was sort of like, he was stunned as well. I mean, he was completely, and well, he put, and this goes back to DMs too, because, and I think this happens with newer DMs because he was newer. He hadn't been doing it for very long. And that's the idea of understanding the balance of party versus adversary.
Mm-hmm.
And we were outmatched. I mean, we would have been outmatched with 2 fire elementals, but he had like 6 of them.
Right.
And I was like, and literally when they appeared, I was like, we're all dead because there's no way we're going to be able to fight these guys. Because, once they hit you, not only do you take damage, but then you're on fire. And, you have to take an action to put yourself out. And then you're like, well, that's it for my action. I was like, so yeah, that was me. I got burned, and then I put myself out, and then all I could do is move. And then I got hit again, and it was like, well, I'm on fire again. Oh yeah, it was horrible. It was horrible.
I can remember giving a player a choice. It's like, look, here's the options. We can let the character die because we're there. You can retire and become a NPC along with your new character. So this character could become an innkeeper or the veteran in the tavern or whatever. I said, you can still visit him. I said, or you can be maimed. You can be blind in one eye or lose a hand or
That's funny.
And the choice. It's like, what do you want to do? Because one of these things is going to happen.
Right.
That was kind of interesting. He actually chose death, I think, if I remember correctly. It's been a long time. But...
I think it's important also to let characters sort of expire naturally. Like even if in a battle, I mean, if they, and I'm one of those, I'm a very sensitive DM in that aspect because it's like, if I kill a character, however it or the monster kills a character, I'm not really doing it, but I like to give that character like a true send off. They have like a vision and see their ancestors welcoming them to that sort of thing. So you give that character sort of a proper send off as opposed to just killing a character and moving on. Because with Soren, if Soren died and he just sort of just killed him, I would need closure. I mean, you can't just kill that character that Soren's been with me since 1994. So you can't just kill him. I'm like, he needs to have a closure. So yeah, I think as DMs, we kind of owe that to our players. And I try to be that. I just I try to, in my current campaign, is I try to give them as much comfort as I can. I don't want it to be all strife. It's like I give them visions and dreams, and they meet family, or they meet this person, they meet that person, or something, sort of like that comes into their lives. Because I think it's important that you, as a DM, that we nurture our characters that way, the players' characters that way. Because I hate, and I've been in campaigns like that too, where it was constantly just fight after fight after fight, tear down after tear down after tear down, and it just gets to a point, even as a player, it starts to have an effect on you. It's like, and it's constantly just this sort of negative reinforcement. It does. I think it has a mental effect even on the player, because it's like, can nothing go right? I mean, it's like, good heavens. And because that's happened in the other campaign, because there was a time there when we were in Bargainzar that I'm just like, can something go right, please?
Yeah.
I mean,
like,
every time we turned
we're
around,
not accomplishing anything. Yeah.
nothing. And it actually began to have an effect on me as a player. And you as a DM, you've really gotta, and that's not, and I'm not picking on that campaign at all, because that campaign's actually really good, but there are moments like that, and I hope that I'll talk to you down there. I hope in my campaign I haven't had those moments, because if I have, I'd want you guys to tell me that, because I would want to correct that.
No, you've given, I mean, I can only speak for myself. I don't know what the other private conversations, I'm not privy to those, but the private one-on-one conversations that Jay Luna's, you've given her plenty of positives to outweigh, yeah.
Well, I try.
Plus the people she's met, and interactions, and fun stuff.
I really try to populate this world with a lot of positive NPCs. I guess the everyday characters you guys encounter, I like to kind of keep them, for the most part, kind of positive. Right. You might meet a curmudgeon here and there that's sort of like, get off my land, but for the most part, I try to make them helpful and friendly and courteous, and
and you can tell it does make a difference.
Yeah.
You like those other people better.
Yeah.
And they get really good. I don't know how much we tipped that one waiter that was so friendly. It was like,
oh yeah.
Here's 100 gold pieces.
Oh, I know. Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was like the most helpful. I mean, he was like the most helpful waiter you would have ever met. And you guys gave him a huge tip. He could probably go and buy his own house. So
for rent.
He's got a nice, really big house. It's really huge.
It might be crap. We're not sure, but
it could be you could die if you go in there. But I can't believe you guys just like left that house. It was like a legitimate thing. It was a gift from the city.
I'm telling you,
y'all are so like.
That's going to be
suspicious.
Why would y'all do that? We're just going to say twang.
Twang. I know there's always that oh god feeling when you see that that roll happen out of nowhere, and it's like you hear the sound of a bowstring.
Or roll perception, and then you roll badly, and you're like, what did I miss?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's my favorite thing in the world, to have them do perception rolls and then they like botch it. It's like, okay.
Yep.
It's just for me.
Yep. Oh yeah, we've had several of those.
I will they also hate when I say I'm going to take a note of that. They hate when I say that.
Yeah. Oh, it's so yeah,
are you sure you want to do that?
Oh yeah.
No, wait a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, that is funny. I have said that a couple of times. I'm like, okay, that's where you want to go? And they're like, oh no, I don't know if that's where I want to go now. I'm like, no, I'm asking you, is that where you want to go? I'm not like, is that where you want to go? So,
yeah.
Yeah. But the folks in my campaign, they're so mistrusting of everything now. It's so funny.
I have the exact same thing going on, because I play with a lot of hallucinations for my characters, just because they're dealing with like that sort of level of occult thing. And early on, I could tell that they were reacting differently if I had them roll for it. So there just has to be some times where it's like, oh, you see your older sister and that you haven't seen in years, and she's running towards you, and it's like, oh my gosh, she's been harpooned in the back. And they're like, no, oh my god, what's happening? And I'm like, and then 4 minutes later she disappears, and it's like, shouldn't I have done something for that? And it's like, yeah, but you wouldn't have had that reaction if you had. If I
that's
had you
funny.
perceive that, or if I had you roll perception for that to happen, it wouldn't have hit you the same.
Right. Exactly.
yeah.
Wouldn't have hit as
Will
hard
can
as it
drop.
did.
He can drop some bombs on you. Like all of a sudden, we're like, baby. There's a baby. There's a what? We have a lot of those. What?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
This
happened to
time,
me.
when you guys went into the past on the dwarves timelines, that was the first time that all of you had dreams or visions at the same time. Because usually I do them individually, you know, this and that. But this time I was like, okay, I need to give them all something that kind of unifies them, which it did, because everyone's like, oh, this happened in my dream, this, and I had this dream. They're like, oh, really? I had a dream very similar to that. And it's like, you know, I tried to get all the dreams to sort of overlap somehow.
Yeah.
And you know, that's another way, you know, we talked about, you know, campaigns derailing and things of that. That's another way you can bring a campaign much back on the rails, is give them some sort of vision or dream that's very, you know, not the exact same dream, but dreams that overlap. And then when because they each hold a puzzle piece, you know, because I try not to release too much information to one particular character. I like to try to spread it out a bit so that they have to talk to each other.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you know, and I've been involved with that sort of thing where it's like, okay, I'm going to give this really cool vision to this one character, and it has all the information they need in it, you know, and it's like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of boring. It's like, you know, I like to split it up so that none of the characters have the complete picture until they talk to each other.
Right. Yeah. You do have to be careful with that, though, because you know the infamous adage about D&D players or TTRPG players and puzzles. As soon as you throw a puzzle at them, it's like, we're done. We can't do it. Just have us roll for it.
Yeah, you guys have been pretty good about puzzles and my riddles for the most part. I've been kind of impressed with it. One of my favorites, I would have to say, one of my favorite puzzle sessions was the one on the island where y'all had to go. Remember the dual rooms through the painting?
Oh, remember? God, yes. Yes.
I had this room
to a painting. Yes.
Yeah, I had this. They were sucked into this sort of building, and I was throwing riddles at them left and right, throwing all that. But they get to this other room, and in this room, it's like there's this sort of like what looks like a bricked up window at one end of the room, and to their right are these three plinths. There's these mirrored objects, and then there's a plinth that looks like something sits on top of, and there's another one in the middle. And on the opposite side of that is a painting of the room.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know who it was that did it first. Was it you that did it first? Oh.
Yep.
So anytime you go over to the painting, if you try to like manipulate the painting, like take it off the wall or like hit it with something or burn it or whatever, whoever does that, they get sucked into the painting.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't get out of the painting until
we're actually in a mirror. We're actually in a room that's exactly the same, except our painting shows the other room.
Yeah, everything's the opposite. It's like they get sucked into an alternate room.
Mm-hmm. We could see people in the paintings, but that was.
Yep, you could see they look like images, and then y'all had to figure out how to get Then Arson's the one that ended up on the other side with you as well.
Yeah,
and basically the way to get out of it is you have to mirror everything, so everything has to be done exactly the same but in the opposite.
Right.
So these two characters are standing here. These two characters have to stand in the same positions. They have to light the things. They have to do this. They have to everything in order for the portal to open for them to go through. So it was fun to watch them do that. And then of course the blood on the wall and things of that. It was really fun. I love throwing. Every once in a while, it's fun to throw sort of like
a nice head scratcher.
You gotta put the brain to work, think your way through it.
Yeah, and because there was no combat in that session. I don't think.
We spent pretty much the
whole session trying to get out of that room.
Figure that out, yeah.
Which is funny. It makes me laugh. But yeah, Of course, I'm not sitting there going, guys, this is super easy, but no, I guess not.
Well, that's how I feel. For the last 3 or 4 sessions, I've been throwing some clues at them as far as like who is like down the pipe that they'll have to deal with. And it's like every time they receive like one of these astral projection characters, they're always like, you can call me M, like the letter M. And they've been throwing it at me in person, like out of session. It's like, so are you just gonna tell me who M is or not? And it's like, no, this is really easy. You've only encountered one other person that has an M in their name, or that their name begins with M. If you do like a little bit of remembering, and mind you, I do like a recording, not a recording, but like I do a typed like summary of all of the sessions, and I keep them in a master doc for them in case they ever forget something. And it was right there. They could have just went back to like their session notes and be like, you are attacked by cultists who like devote themselves to somebody under the name Magus. And it's like, that's the only M name I've used.
There's the M. There's the answer.
Yeah. And I eventually, I got the opportunity to have one character who was in that same cult, like in his previous life, before he became a vampire. He was like, can I do some information like seeking with like some of my old pals from the time and that sort of thing? And I was like, yeah, sure, give me the role for that. And he did a stellar like 3 out of 3 success roll. And I was like, so you were devoted to, in the Order of Saturn, a specific sect who worshipped his son Magus. And it's like, that's where it is. That's the name. That's the M this entire time.
Hello. Yeah. Note taking, I think, is very important on the play. I think for a player specifically. I mean, DM absolutely, but players tend to, you know, like you take really good notes, Jade Luna, and Osric takes really good notes, but I don't think Ro here takes very good notes, even though he's technically a DM. He takes, because he's constantly asking me, he's like, what was that person's name? He's like, I didn't write it down. What was that thing called? I didn't write it down. And I'm like, okay, well, we can go look back through the chat because I put it in the chat.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I think it's important because we do. And now in my campaign, it is very important because you've got to remember names and places.
Oh, yeah, everything cycles and is it's all interconnected in some way. We're just beginning to figure it out, you know.
Yep. Because you know, like you've encountered tons of names, and they all relate to one another in some way or another. You don't know how they all relate, but you know that the Onwell surname has been bounced everywhere, and so it's important to keep notes. I have my little pad over here that I write everything on as we're going down. But yeah, keep your notes because that's good. I mean, good idea to do session notes is not a bad idea. So you know, I could do that too. But I, you know, like Osric, he takes tons of notes because I've gone in and looked at his character sheet to look at some stuff, and I'm like, he's got tons. He's got them all, you know, by date and everything. I'm like, good for you, because good for you. So yeah, that's very important. I think take those notes because I do. There's a lot of NPCs in my campaign that I have to keep straight. It's like, because I'm like, okay, which Onwell are you meeting today? It's like go down the list. You know, you might meet a new one today. I don't know.
Exactly. Let's throw in yet another one.
Exactly. Well, I mean, when you guys were in Carcadia, you met someone from your village who was actually a dark hand, and who was converted.
Yep, and I went back and looked because I have a list of all the, you know, it's not a big village, so I know everyone in the village, and we had given them names and occupations, and turned out he had pulled one of them out.
Yep.
Awesome.
And so yeah, it's one of those, and I've got, you know, I have binders for each of my campaigns. You know, these nice little black binders. It says Orlea on the thing. I've got, and so it has all the character information in it and gods and things of that, so that I can refer back to it if I have to. I've become so familiar with these characters. I don't really necessarily have to look every so often. I'll need to look at like a specific name or like, I didn't know Rohir and Osric's father's name. I couldn't remember what it was, so I had to look it up. So yeah, just keep notes. So I tried to, and I'm going back to our original topic because we segued, which is great because I just love talking anything D&D or the tabletop RPGs. And we've learned a lot about the the Masquerade, which I didn't know a lot about. So
it's a fun one. It's I always like to put games on like a spectrum, and it's like on one end you have board games, and then on the other hand you have like interactive like murder mystery theater. It definitely falls at like the 3/4 mark on that one, where it's much more theater than it is like game. And I've always really found that that's really enticing to me.
Right.
Putting D&D at like the perfect midpoint between those two things.
I think D&D is a perfect, I think every theater person should play D&D.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's like when I started playing again with you guys, I completely forgot how much acting it is, how much, like building the character, creating the character, the personalities, how they're related to the other characters, how this, it's all just, and then because I use it in my classes now, my intro to theater classes, because I use it to teach all aspects of theater, not just acting, but directing. As a GM, you're the director. There's light design, there's sound design, there's set design, there's costume design, there's props design. I mean, it's all there, and it's amazing. And I never really thought about it, because I always thought of it as just a game. But now I'm just like, it has so many possibilities that I'm gonna incorporate it in my other classes as well, in some way or another. But yeah, I think I truly believe anyone who's interested in theater should play D&D at least once, do a one-off, or whatever. But really, I mean, because it really kind of has kept me alive over this quarantine. I'm like, as an actor, as an artist, as a theater artist, it's really kind of kept me sane. Because it's we haven't been able to be on stage since March actually. And usually we're doing something, but nope. And now we're not going to be on stage this entire fall. It's D&D is going to save my life, I think. But yeah, it's such a great thing. And now that I know a little bit more about Vampire the Masquerade, and I'm going to look into it more. And I know there are tons of other platforms and other, role-playing games and that sort of thing, which I need to start expanding my mind a little bit more on those. But I really like the idea. I really like the homebrew idea.
Mm-hmm.
When I was first thinking about doing a full campaign, because I did the one-off out of I've done two. I did two of them, but that one that I did with you and Russell, I think. Yeah, that was super fun. Because that's where Dragon Milk was first introduced, and I was just hooked on it. And I was like, oh my god, this is so much fun. And then as I was thinking about and then I did the one with Madame Regina. I need to bring her into this campaign, I think, somewhere, because I really like that character. It's like, I really like her. I mean, why not? Yeah, I know, something, like an alternate version of her. I don't know. There was that character I created. Her name was Madame Regina. She owned the Slaughtered Lamb, this tavern and she in a town called Pertwee, and was sort of a subdivision really of Bargainzar, but she was this kind of a badass, actually. She was this sort of, I always like to call her a busty wench, and she talked like a sailor and held her own. She was quite wealthy, but you couldn't really tell by the way she dressed and acted. You would think she was sort of a commoner, but she was actually quite wealthy. but yeah, she had connections everywhere, and she's she was this fun, super fun character, and every time any chance I can get, I think I should bring her back because she's just super fun, and I love her.
I love revisiting characters.
Yeah, I really did. And then there was several. I mean, I've this whole idea of homebrew. I'm getting off subject because I just love talking about these things. But when I was thinking about my first campaign, the very first thing I did was build the world. That was when I was like, okay, now you guys take whatever I put it through a messages. I was like, first come, first serve. Whoever wants to choose your area, and it's yours. And they all did, and they all shaped those areas how they want it. Because I mean, we worked pretty close. Because like the one I remember the most is yours, because we created all of those different areas. You're like, oh, this should be like a lot of forested area. So I went into the map thing and put all those trees in there and changed the topography. And
here's the shadowed vale. There should be between
yeah. So no, and I've said it in many other videos, but I think it gives you guys a sense of ownership.
Yes.
Because I feel that in my campaign, you guys actually care about this world. As opposed to we're just playing in this world. And I think that's important as a DM to give your players a say in the world they're going to be living in, I think. And so from the very beginning, my stuff has been homebrewed. The whole world's been homebrewed. For the most part, all my bad guys are homebrewed to a sense because the players' characters are they're high statted. I've had to modify every monster they fight because otherwise they would knock them out so fast. And like the ones that have like the DC 18 saves or the DC 20 saves, I mean, for the most part, like the DC 20s are the ones that are based on the character's spellcasting ability. But I've had to up some of the DCs because, like, for instance, Russell Rose, he can roll very high. So I have to take that into consideration. And I just love building monsters. I'm a member of D&D Beyond, and I have a whole homebrew section of all my stuff that I've homebrewed. Like that spell, the Webster's spell that you got, that Kieran gave you, that's all homebrewed.
Right. The stone.
The stone's homebrewed. The Lithari ring was homebrewed. The Moonblade you got was homebrewed. The Warhammer that Orlis has was homebrewed. I mean, I homebrewed just about everything. The BBEG. I mean, it's all homebrewed. So I love it. I love creating those sorts of things because it just I think it makes it more fun, at least on my part. It's like, it creates.
I want to play now.
I know. Well, it's tomorrow. And you guys are on a boat. This is going to be fun. I've also started pulling pop culture into my campaign. I've started. We've been talking here at the house, and I get some really good ideas from the other half. And one of them was we were talking about pop culture, and I was like, oh, they're on a boat. What can I do? And this is spoiler alert, but I homebrewed the Shrieking Eels from The Princess Bride.
You actually had said you were thinking about it.
So I took those and homebrewed them. So now they're like a D&D character.
Yeah.
And,
awesome.
So I'm going to be bringing another one in later on. You guys are going to fight a whole. I don't know what they would be called, but a whole.
There is a whole Doctor Who theme running through there with names of towns.
Yeah, I do have my Doctor Who. Yeah, because the town you guys just left is actually a city on Gallifrey.
Mm-hmm. I don't doubt it.
Arcadia is a city on Gallifrey.
We run into
Bakersville, Troughton, Pertwee.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Tenantville too. Yeah, Tenantville.
We have run into sometimes it's like who can catch it first.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's something. I'm always kind of paranoid because obviously my campaign is set in a relative modern day, in a relative like parallel to Earth, and I every session I go into, there's like a little thing in the back of my head. It's like one of the characters is just going to be like, now just wait a moment. I've played this Silent Hill game before. You just hold on a second. I watched Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And
See,
it's
that's
like,
great. But
yeah.
see, I think that's okay because I like the whimsy. I like the adding
Mhm.
little whimsical
That
things in
tongue in
there.
cheek, then it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
You
it
know,
gives your players, because some of your players will be like, wait a minute, I know that. What is that? I know that from somewhere. You know, it's like, and I think it's so much fun.
in the other campaign, his mentor's name is Nelrum. And I'm like, I see what you did there. If you spell that backwards, it's Merlin.
Yep. Yep. Neil Room, the Great. Yeah, he has spelled it back as Merlin. Yep. So yeah, I love whimsy. I think it's fun. You know, it adds to the funness of the game, I think.
Mhm.
You know, because again, it goes back to that whole, you know, everything being serious. It's just sort of like, oh my gosh. So, you know, there's in one of the sessions coming up somewhere, I don't know where it's going to be yet, but you guys are going to fight a whole like group of Bigfoot.
Oh my God.
I'm going to turn Bigfoot into a D&D character.
Nice.
Yeah, he's going
That's
to
fun. That's a lot of fun.
master of hide and seek.
That's not too hard to do. I mean, what is Bigfoot but like a really, really popular bugbear?
Yeah. Well, one of the funny things about it, and I've already started fleshing it out, and this is, again, spoiler alerts, but because he is a master of hide and seek, every time you try to shoot or fight him, you have to roll a perception check to see if you see him.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so you're like, oh, I'm going to shoot him with my bow. It's like, all right, roll a perception check to see if you see him, because he's a master of hide and seek. So you have to do that, and if you don't pass, then you don't see him. So it's like, well, you can't see him.
Nice.
So yeah, it's gonna be fun. So you know, and it's because my campaign, we're actually about 2/3 of the way through my campaign right now. You guys are getting closer to the end.
Don't say that.
I know. Well, I say closer. It's not like coming tomorrow. It's like it's a ways off, but we're about 2/3 of the way through. But you're going to see a lot more whimsy coming your way because I just love it. I got a light, and I will say you guys are pretty good about bringing the humor too. Which you have to have. You got to have that humor in there, otherwise it gets kind of deep and dark, and you all fall down a dark hole somewhere.
Yeah, we look for the what can we do to be fun?
Yeah. Oh yeah. You guys are you do not disappoint at all, because there's I think every session at some point we're all laughing our butts off because of, you know, what somebody says or somebody does, and you guys are also really funny. And I'm going to do this, but first I'm going to do this, and then land on his head, and I'm just like, okay. Let's do an athletics check and see if that happens. And for the most part, you guys have done some pretty clever things, and I think it's super fun. And I've you know, give out inspiration here and there. Too bad you can't do double inspiration, because some of you would have earned it a couple of times over. So yeah, keep that whimsy in there. So
Coming up with his insults.
Yeah.
Now that he's gotten. Yes.
So yeah, so keep that whimsy in there, and otherwise, you know, that whole, it gets too dark. I think it does, and you know, we've already, you know, and again, going back to our original subject of evil and intent, I think that, you know, in my campaign, I really try not to separate or label the two sides, because, you know, like, again, the folks in this party, I mean, they have a reputation that probably, and you guys haven't seen it yet, but you're going to be seeing it soon, where your reputation precedes you.
That could be good or bad.
Yeah. Well, you guys are about to go into Valmead, and Valmead is the darker. It's like the volcanic area of this
Right.
world, and sort of where you'll find a lot of the like the goblins are here, and what you would consider the darker races, not necessarily evil, but darker, like Drow live in Valmead, and orcs live in Valmead, and just because of the environment, not because they're bad, but that's just they thrive in this place. So you guys are going to be encountering a lot of that once you get into Valmead, because yeah, I don't want to say too much because I'll give away a lot of it, but
Don't give it away.
nope, don't want to give it away. So yeah, I personally, and to sum up my whole thing of this whole conversation we've been having is, one, keep it fun, keep your whimsy in there. No matter what your players think, they'll love you for it. And try not to label the best you can. Like I said, I try not to say evil and the good guys and the evil guys or the bad guys. Just
Right.
try to find a different way, because I just think it limits you if you do that. It limits the character actually if you do that. And just keep your players honest, and you do that by how you tell your story, or how you allow them to tell the story. Make sure you've got to, as the DM, I think it's our job, not necessarily to push them where we want them to go, but to keep them honest. Because you don't want to be like they're making choices that make no sense to the characters, and sometimes that does happen. They go, "Oh, I'm going to do this," and it's like, "Why would you do that?" It's like, can you, as a DM, I'm just sort of like, well, that doesn't make any sense. The way you've built your character, it doesn't make any sense at all. There would have some, there would have to be some like extremely like weird circumstances for your character to do X. That's so far outside of who they are. So as DMs, I think we have to be those sort of
you kind of have to be the gatekeeper,
Yeah, and I hate that term too, gatekeepers, and
yeah,
because I hate to say that, because I mean, for me in my campaign, I let you guys basically, and we've had this conversation before, I let you guys tell this story.
yes.
I know the bad guys I have. I know what you have to do. I know where you need to be, but I want you guys to get there how you get there.
Yeah. But we need that moderator. I have been in campaigns where, an argument has gone from playful to ugly in about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And you need to have that one person say,
yes.
"Oh, okay."
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the DM's. I think that's our job, is to keep that sense of order amongst the players. But the characters need to drive the story. I mean, it is storytelling, and so you and I have talked about that. Is that for me the primary purpose of what we do is to tell stories, and we have a huge story to tell. And one of the great things about Gods of Orlea is that this is y'all's story. It's not my story, because you guys are shaping the story every session. It changes, and we talked about this in the whole temporal aspect.
Right.
Everything that you do changes the future. So I may have, for me as a DM, I'd be like, okay, you're going to fight this big baddie here, and whatever, and then you're going to find this thing, and then you guys decide to go over here instead. Okay, well then that's where we go. I'm not going to force you back, or force you to go somewhere that it doesn't make sense for you to go, because if you chose to go right instead of left, then right's the correct choice. It's like, and I think a lot of DMs have a problem letting that go.
Yeah.
And and it's because it's those DMs that are so inflexible that, I've created all of this stuff to happen, and I have these monsters, and I have all this action that I would need, and you just basically skipped over all of it, and then they get all pissy, or they completely mentally derail.
Yes.
They don't know how to they don't know how to continue.
Where to go? Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, well, and I'm like, well, I as myself as a DM, I have like a list of monsters that, or bad guys, or opposing figures that I can drop anywhere. So if they go right instead of left, so instead of fighting those big red dragons, they're going to go right and they're going to fight these earth elementals. It's like I have that ready for wherever you guys take me. I've got it ready to go. So when you guys are on this boat tomorrow, wherever you guys take me, I'm ready for you. I've got it. So I think DMs have to be able to be flexible that way, because if you don't, I think you're going to lose that trust from your players. Because I've worked with DMs where they just sort of like lost it, and it's like, wow, okay, so what are we doing now? I mean, it's like, as a player, I'm like, okay, well, I'm sorry that I threw a wrench in your plans, but
Right.
it's your job to kind of predict that it's going to happen, because it's going to, out of human nature, So be prepared. I'll say, be prepared to go where you don't necessarily want to go, but it's where you need to go, because that's where your players are taking you. The only time I have ever done that in my campaign is with the boats, because y'all were just going to walk. And I'm like, you aren't looking. There's a boat right over there. Go.
We almost, even after we found the boats, we still considered walking.
Yes, you did. I was like, oh my goodness.
Because the boat was going to be a trap.
Of course.
It's a mimic.
And there might be rapids and he can't swim. And
Can you imagine if the boat was a mimic?
They're house mimics, so why not?
How funny would that have been? But no, I was literally like,
so totally.
I was like, maybe you guys want to look around a little bit. They're like, why? Because you were like, well, I already looked around. I was like, well, no, you looked around the castle. You didn't look around the grounds. And they was like, you should look. And you guys found his stables.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, there's stables. There was only 2 horses in it, but there was stables. Then I was like, if you look a little bit more to your right. So they look, I'm like, you see a boat. They're like, oh, boats. Okay. I was like, oh my gosh. Because they're like, okay, I can carry this guy.
We can't go too far off track on a ship. It's not like we can.
Well, that is true. Thank God.
A little kind of had the idea at least of what direction we're heading.
Fair enough. That is true. You guys can't. I think I'll go over here, and it's like 5 miles away. No, I guess you can't do that. But
well, that's until somebody gets the idea to cast flight on the boat.
That's true. I'm predicting, and again, this is all players. This is all you guys. I literally am predicting that you guys are going to sink the ship. I think you are. I think you guys are going to do something. I seriously think you guys are going to shipwreck or something. Cause I really believe that. Because again, like I said, you guys direct it. I mean, it's like
things get destroyed. We don't intend it to.
No, you don't intend it.
We leave a wake of destruction and bodies behind us everywhere we go.
You really do. It's so funny. It's like all the dark hands that you guys have killed. Y'all just sort of left them there and walked away. So yeah, that's my prediction. I mean, it may not happen, and that's fine. And y'all may just sail right. It'd be great. But I predict that you guys are going to do something, and that boat's going to sink, or it's going to shipwreck, or something. It's
y'all can all stay tuned, because we'll tell you.
Yep. Yeah, stay tuned, because you'll find out. Because that's tomorrow. It's going to be super fun.
You really ought to sit in and watch a session sometime.
Oh, I'd love to.
That's not my decision. That'd be up to you and all the other players. But
yeah,
just, to me, we can talk about mechanics and how you run a campaign, but to see it in action.
No, you're welcome. We meet on Sundays at 2:30.
As far as I know, that would work for me. I would offer the same extension if either one of you ever wanted to see
Yeah,
how I
I'd
ran
love
one
to.
of mine.
I've never seen that platform run. I wouldn't mind seeing that platform run.
Right.
I'd want your players to be cool with someone.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know.
We've had sitters before, so I would run it by them first, but I can't imagine it being a problem with any of them.
Yeah.
They've all watched my interview with Halfling already, so they're at least somewhat familiar with the individuals. And I talk all of my friends from home up all the time, so I can't see it being a problem.
Yeah, I would love to have a session with you and your players and let you guys talk about the experience of it.
I have one of them that would definitely be interested. I can get back to you on that one. Because he's just as soon as somebody talks about a game to him, he's like, "Let's do it, let's go." He's just so animated, and I love him for it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I would love to have a session with you and your crew, and maybe some of my crew as well. And we can all talk about the similarities and the differences and
right.
That sort of thing. That'd be great. I think we should look
that.
I think we should look at having that happen. So awesome. I sent out a message to everybody, so we'll see what everyone says, and if so, I can send you the link to it and everything, and you can sit in and watch, and you can kind of see how that campaign goes.
Right.
It's a lot of fun. We have a good time. So, all right. So I think you just got the message.
I did.
So evil versus intent. We're very much, I personally don't think. I think it's kind of a consensus here. I think we all kind of agree that
every character has already responded and said no problem. Sure.
Okay. Well, there you go. So I'll send you, as soon as I get off here, I'll send you the link to it.
Coolio.
Very cool.
So awesome. All right. So thank you guys for joining me in this. We derailed ourselves and went on many different topics, and that's awesome because we're talking about D&D and we all love that. So, and role play games in general. So thank you guys for joining me. And as I always say, keep playing, and I will see you all very soon. Peace out.